What I can tell you about her is that she was a deeply expressive and genuine person, and probably one of the most authentic people I've ever met. I realized that my life didn't have to be the way it was, and it could go more into a life that she was living and that she and Connie had, that it was all about art and kindness and about being decent, good people.
Sally Brophy liked to say the wind blew her and Connie into Provincetown. A chance change in vacation plans set a new course for their lives, one that would also have an impact on many others they met along the way.
I always did art, but I grew up in a very blue-collar neighborhood, a very blue-collar town, and I think that the underlying message is you don't make a living as an artist. You have to do something else. You don't. That wasn't an option. I didn't know graphic design existed as a job. Being artistic and making a living, those two things didn't go together.
Sally really had this attitude about embracing this community, becoming part of the community. She really immersed herself in the fabric of Provincetown. And I think that's one of the reasons why, she was able to leave corporate America and pursue a dream of being an artist here in Provincetown for 20 years.
The town embraces that kind of life. It's expected that you would be creative in some way. Oh, of course you're a writer, of course you're an artist. Yeah. That's, it's kind of reverse world where that's honored more.
When I met them, I was just sort of creatively, it was like a hobby, being creative, and then they're just like ordinary people, and they were showing in galleries and part of the art community in Provincetown. I just never experienced anything like that, and they just really, I feel sort of almost paved the way for me and showed me that it was possible to just be an ordinary person who happens to make art,
It was pre-planned. She knew that she was living an authentic life. And I admired that. I wanted that for myself. I would ask her what her days were like, because they were so different than mine. And she would say, if I feel like I want to go for a walk on the beach, I'll just go do it. Or if I want to take some time out of my day to do X, Y, or Z, she said, I don't have a boss. I'm my own boss. I don't have to do that. And I was struggling because I did have a boss, and I wanted to get away from being in such a controlled corporate environment. So she gave me clues about what life could look like after that.
Sal spent a lot of time in nature. If you didn't know where she was and she wasn't home and she wasn't teaching a class, Sally was out somewhere hiking.
I just feel at home in nature. It's my church, it's my muse, and the more I like to learn about it, every little detail from why is that little moss growing there to why might this large mammal be living here, and how could you tell?
Taking a walk on the beach is really a magical thing to be able to do here. She knew a lot about the beach and its elements as well, which I think is kind of cool because, a lot of people just come to the beach and they don't really think about what happens on the beach, and erosion in particular. Like these tidal pools are all newer in the last decade or so. They were never there before, but watching the way that the beach changes, especially after a winter, she was very tuned into the changes that happened on the beach.
Whenever we would have a non-art activity, we'd go for these epic walks, and she always had walking chocolate. I don't know if anybody ever told you that. So she'd always have some chocolate in her pocket. So we would take a long walk through Hatches Harbor, snacking on chocolate and just talking about things. What we talked about, I don't think I can even remember, but I always remembered those walks.
When you're walking with somebody, you're engaged in the conversation, but you're also engaged in what's around you. There's a connection that comes.
But one of the things that I used to get Sally to do, which is my trademark, which is this. And we would do this together. And Sally with the upside glasses. Anyway, she loved that. She laughed. She would laugh. She would put hers on upside down. We would just sit there and talk. Anyway, that was my thing. Okay.
I want to create a visual conversation with my photos that takes the viewers to a place that exists not only in my imagination, but also in the world right outside my door, Sally said. Her constant exploration and patient observation brought a new eye to familiar trails and beaches.
In a way, her photographs documented her life, where she was, what she was doing. That's what I see in her photos. You know, I was here.
We'd be walking along on a trail or out on the beach or someplace, and you know, we're enjoying it. You're listening to the sounds and seeing different things, but Sal had always had this ability of just honing right in on something exquisite.
What really set her apart was when she became inspired by the white line woodblock print process, which is also coined as the Provincetown print, and that was perfected in Provincetown around 1915, and Sally really immersed herself in the process.
And I started studying with Kathy Smith, who does white line woodcuts. And I really liked it. I took to it, I guess, you know. And I liked not only the cutting of the wood, but the sort of mechanical process, and then also the painting end of it, the making of a print in this slow method. It was kind of a balance to graphic design.
Here in Provincetown, always, you see kind of a masterful use of the white line process. Here you have kind of that whimsical thing that again shows all of her love for the sea and for the whales and the fish, and you see her dog she incorporates in, and that's actually a simplification of the house where I live. And these prints are you know, they're joyous.
I think she liked the physicality of carving the block, and then the fact that it wasn't boring.
It's a monotype. It's a one of a kind. Even if you do another, the first one I do all this, when I do this again, this is a very slow process by hand using watercolor. Watercolor is very fickle. It's hard to be consistent. And so each one is a one of a kind. Even if the matrix stays the same, the matrix, the white line, stays the same, but each one is going to be totally different. Like I've done these enough times that when I first did this, it was very much like Picasso's original Mediterranean colors. And then by the second or third or fourth time, it was Cape Cod blues and, you know, colors.
Maine was home for Sally and Connie, and after many years in Provincetown, they went back north to a small artistic town.
We just fell in love with Belfast. I wanted to be back in Maine, and I wanted to be someplace that had a really strong community.
You know, her move to Maine was to be closer to her family, but I think, you know, parts of Provincetown went with her there. You know, still creating artwork, taking these walks, thinking about nature and how that factors into her life. And I think a lot of the platforms or bases that she built here, she took with her.
She was very proud of her Maine heritage.
Yeah, very. You know, and she was tall and she was strong. It doesn't surprise me at all that they practically built that house themselves.
Sally's deep appreciation of nature and the environment led her to become involved in the fight against a proposed factory fish farm slated to turn 50 acres of woodlands and wetlands on the shore of her beloved little river into an industrial-scale, land-based salmon-raising operation.
They loved Belfast, and in some ways it's sort of Provincetown pre-wealth and fabulousness, and that all of a sudden was being threatened by this Norwegian company that was going to come in and put a salmon farm in. And so Sally got involved.
Biggest thing that we were doing was looking at the science and trying to understand what the impact was going to be on the bay, what this whole factory was really about. I think we shared, like many people do, a very deep sense of presence on the land, that it's not just a thing or an it or a place. It's part of the life community. Right? It's part of the larger community. Right? It's not just human community, it's all community.
On Thursday, Maine's Supreme Judicial Court ruled against Nordic Aqua Farms and said the deeds make clear that the intertidal zone belongs to the neighbors. But officials from the city of Belfast, which supports the project, say they expect to be successful in another case and that the Nordic project will eventually be built. For Maine Public Radio News, I'm Kevin Miller.
Sally, she was going to say it as it was, and she was going to make it happen, and she was going to do it in a way that was also light.
She was somebody who was very, very positive, really always. She didn't seem to suffer from angst like a lot of people, and that's something that I like to hold with me with her.
I miss her a lot. She left a huge, huge footprint on my heart, for sure. Sally was, I miss her a lot. Come on.